right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we got a really fun one for you guys. We're talking about The Beach Bum from Harmony Korine. You know him from Spring Breakers and Gummo and a whole bunch of other crazy movies. And this is, kind of his most mainstream-ish movie to date. It stars Matthew McConaughey as a beach bum. And he's a poet named Moondog who just kind of is hanging out and living life. And it is a straight shot of joy and happiness. So I'm really excited to talk about it. And with me is returning co-host Joe Black. But before we get into that conversation, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure that you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. And follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And I think that does it for now. Let's jump into the conversation about The Beach Bum with co-host Joe Black. All right, The Beach Bum. We've got with us Joe Black back on the show. How you doing, Joe?
Oh, I'm doing good. Exhausted in a good way. So shooting a new movie right now. And long days.
Nice. Yeah, you sent me some pictures, and it looks like it's a fun shoot so far.
Oh yeah, really good team of people in front and behind the camera. It's excellent. But I did find time to see The Beach Bum.
Nice.
I will always find time for Harmony Korine.
Yeah, speaking of fun shoots, The Beach Bum looks like it was such a blast to make. Harmony Korine, probably his biggest movie. I mean, of course there was Spring Breakers, but now it's almost like a more mainstream version of the thing that he does.
Oh, absolutely. This is a blank check movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is they said, somebody likes you. Here's a little bit more money. And what did he do? He made the feel great movie of the decade.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And I really didn't know what to expect going into it because, as you never do with his films, but I was pleasantly surprised. And with that said, I think we might as well. We'll talk about it plenty as we're going through these puzzle pieces. We might as well jump in. What do you got for your first puzzle piece?
I have Arthur for my first puzzle piece, which are the Dudley Moore or Russell Brand one, whichever you prefer. I prefer the Russell Brand one, but I'm talking about the original. I just going into this idea of somebody who's kind of living off of their parents' money, or who there's an ultimatum made, and they have to make a decision of whether or not they can have a life of poverty without it, or whether or not they can kind of quote unquote man up and reclaim their fortune both internally and monetarily. This one is this is kind of like the the stoner version of Arthur. He was an alcoholic. That was his big addiction. This and and I do like the original Arthur. This movie does touch on sobriety, but it kind of throws it out the window.
Exactly. Yeah, it throws any kind of message or anything right out the window, and beautifully so too. I mean, this is a pure escapist, just fun, ridiculous, and it's like it doesn't want you to learn anything.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the biggest thing about addiction too is that it's not if you want to kick your addiction, it's not going to work unless it's your choice. You know what I mean? You can't mandate things like that. You know what I mean? And I really like the approach this movie took, where it's 5 minutes and he's just like,
well, when you meet Zac Efron, I mean, I think
in those Jinko jeans,
yeah, it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work for you.
Just when you think Harmony Korine can't surprise you anymore, suddenly there's a Creed song on the soundtrack. You know what I mean? It's pretty good. But funny enough, unlike Arthur, I think that this movie, oddly for Harmony Korine, has a stronger structure and a stronger shape. I always felt the original Arthur was a little kind of all over the map, and this one is actually pretty brilliantly A to B. It's I actually was really surprised by the movie. I was expecting from the trailer, a Spring Breakers 2 of sorts, and
absolutely
it doesn't a drop feel like Spring Breakers. Honestly, it really doesn't. It's too feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. It really the characters all just want to have a great time, and the movie wants you to have a great time along with it.
Right.
Yeah, and and one last thing I'll mention along with your puzzle piece there, because it's a great one. It's funny writing that line of a main character that really is kind of a dick at times, but you're still along for the ride, and you're kind of rooting for him, but at the same time, he's just he's
right. Well, I always found
he's the beach bum.
I always found about Arthur too, the original at least, which was interesting. I never thought that his drunk scenes were supposed to play for comedy. I always thought that those were kind of the drama, and that the comedy comes from his sober scenes when he's a little sharper, a little wittier. I always felt that there was a sad wash over the alcoholic scenes, and I don't know. I guess my perspective of that movie is just a little skewed. I'll stick with the Russell Brand one, which is a little more shapely, and I love Greta Gerwig. So
nice. All right, I'll go to my first puzzle piece, and I wanted to get this one out of the way first because, as is pretty clear already, just a few minutes into the podcast, I really, really enjoyed The Beach Bum, but I did want to get one movie that I did not like out of the way. And that is Surfer Dude. Did you ever see this with Matthew McConaughey?
I did, actually. That's funny.
This movie kind of looks like it came from the same place of, let's set Matthew McConaughey, let's set him loose to do his Matthew McConaughey thing and just be Matthew McConaughey, but film full of weed and everything, and turn the camera on. Except for it was just insufferable and annoying, and I just didn't like it one bit. And I was worried when I first saw the trailer for this. I was like, well, this could go that way, or maybe it could finally be the version of Matthew McConaughey that we want to see, doing this. And luckily, it went the right way.
Yeah. I haven't thought of Surfer Dude so long. That came pretty close to After Fool's Gold, which was another McConaughey at the beach kind of movie. Yeah. I wonder if maybe when they were wrapped on set of that, he's like, I'm just gonna chill here, and it's
just keep the cameras here for another extra week.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh man, Surfer Dude. I saw that when I worked at Blockbuster.
Nice.
I thought it was a Blockbuster exclusive. I didn't know other people had seen it.
Yeah, right. Oh man. So what's your next puzzle piece?
Okay, my next one that I have is Broken Lizard's Club Dread.
Oh, nice. I didn't think of that. And I love that movie.
Well, it's so funny. The Beach Bum, which I absolutely loved. It's so funny. I don't smoke weed. I don't really drink. I hate the beach. Not the biggest fan of Florida. I don't care for Snoop Dogg or Jimmy Buffett, but for some reason, I love this movie. And thinking about the Jimmy Buffett thing and Coconut Pete, Bill Paxton's character from Club Dread. I wish Jimmy Buffett was that cool. Yeah, you know what I mean. And
maybe if you combine the two, you get a Coconut Pete a little bit.
Oh yeah. And when I was watching The Beach Bum, aside from the Coconut Pete association, there is kind of like a I don't want to say a dread, no pun intended, to The Beach Bum, but there is a menace. There's a little bit of a menace to it. It's like a Dennis the Menace, you know what I mean? And
right.
So I like this idea of this beach tropical thing set to like some pretty gruesome shit at times. But that never really. I mean, like that scene where he and Zac Efron like steal the money. Like that's actually pretty dark. Like it's an old man on like a little wheelchair scooter, and they just pummel him. You know what I mean? And, yeah.
There was this dude sitting in front of me, this black dude. He could not stop laughing at that scene. I mean, he laughed for like 2 straight minutes, like uncontrollably. And I don't blame him, because it was an uncomfortable funny. It was like, oh, this is awful. This is so awful.
That whole act 2 is brilliant with little things like that, like the shark and all that. My brother and I, we saw it together, and there was only like 5 people in the audience, but there was this guy sitting in front of us that every time like a song that he liked would come on the soundtrack, which this movie is kind of a musical in a way.
Oh yeah.
It's every time he would like clap and cheer. Like he was like, in his 60s, I assume, but like it was the most bizarre thing. It was like a midnight showing on a Sunday, and he just, oh man, this guy came for the music.
I was pretty psyched both times they played The Cure. The Cure in a Harmony Korine movie was pretty exciting.
There are some sequences like that in this movie, like that whole sequence with the with Snoop Dogg and her on the dock. I think that there's a lot to this movie that we've never seen before that's not being appreciated by critics, especially, where it's like, no, this is actually something new and exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of not being appreciated, Club Dread was not appreciated. I remember when it came out, and I'm sure it's because it followed up Super Troopers, which everybody loved so much. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard movie to follow up, but I loved that movie when it came out. Me and my buddy Q watched it like multiple times in the theater.
Same. Funny.
Yeah, it was so good, and it got no respect. I don't know. It was too silly for people. I guess I don't know.
I just find that movie to be so quotable. I can't tell you how many times, whenever anybody shows me their new shoes, all I think of is where he's like, the word for our shoe is zapato, and he goes, shoe. That whole scene is great. Am I the only one who thinks his head looks like a fucking octopus? We have jungle rats?
So many good parts.
Yeah,
so many.
Good. What's your next puzzle piece?
Yeah, so let me go on to the next one. Okay, so I think it would be pretty easy to look at the movie and say, it's kind of an empty, just a jokey, fun film. But I do think the one thing that you can look at it and read into is looking at how we lift up these kind of these celebrities that maybe aren't really as interesting as they think they are. And I thought of Tropic Thunder, which really skewers the whole Hollywood system and actors and their self-importance. And I think Moondog is, his poetry is, does he deserve to get to live this life of anything he wants for as long as he wants with no consequences because of this poetry that he writes? Probably not. And I think it's really funny, to kind of shine a light on that in the way that this movie does.
Well, the beauty of him, it's all just kind of a casual joke to him, you know what I mean? Like the celebrity idea of it. But I think that there is beauty in his authenticity. I actually think that by starting it with that poem about, being inside of her and feeling beautiful, and then ending it on that, I really liked that because it did kind of make his poetry resonate. I don't know if I have a book of poetry by Harmony Korine called Crack Up at the Race Riots. And it's very similar. So I don't know, maybe this is a little more of an autobiography in a way for Harmony Korine, because Beach Bum itself could be like what Spring Breaker, it's a blank check movie, and Bumdog gets that blank check to do what he wants. And what does he do? He fills a boat with money and lights it on fire. You know what I mean?
Which is one of the best endings I've seen in a long time for any movie.
I even before the big reveal that he survived it, I was cheering. I was just like, what a beautiful ending. You know what I mean? Like what a beautiful ending and fitting.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. What's your next puzzle piece?
The next one that I actually had was young adult. Because I like this idea of in young adult, which before I go on, I'm not a huge fan of the end product of a Jason Reitman film, but I always appreciate the effort. Mm-hmm. Except for Labor Day, I really loved Labor Day and Men, Women, and Children. But young adult, young adult is about an author. Did you see that film?
Yeah.
Where Charlize Theron plays a young adult author who her life isn't quite going as well as she wants, and she's looking for purpose, so she goes back home, and it's one of those self-discovery kind of movies where she tries to fit in with normal society and finally grow up and blah blah. But then at the end she realized, maybe my place is just being me.
Yeah.
And now that one, it was a little more cynical and pointless. You know what I mean? It almost seemed like the whole movie was made just for that joke at the end, where the one girl's like, "Can I come with you?" And she goes, "Oh, you're good here." So I wasn't so into that movie, but what I liked about The Beach Bum was that it's another movie where it's go on a mission of self-discovery, and really what he needed to discover was that he didn't need money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't need money in that way. You know, at the beginning of the movie, he wants to stay in Key West. She makes him come back to the mainland. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you got to come back. You know, and he goes back for her, but once she's not there anymore, what's the point of being there? You know what I mean? And there's something. I mean, I really loved that. Even his wife dying. This movie's just such a feel good movie. You know, even his wife dying. It's not like a It's not bad because they got that last moment together. It was like arguably the best night of their life, you know what I mean? Or just a wonderful night. And then they get that final moment together. Even when she dies, he's not like, he's just like, oh. You know?
How great is the scene with him and Snoop Dogg talking about her
oh, it's wonderful.
Her blowjob skills.
Wonderful. And
incredible.
Yeah, and Snoop Dogg really showed up for this one. I'm not the biggest fan of him, especially as an actor. But he really showed up in this one. I really loved that. And that third act plot twist of them putting him in women's clothes almost is just a stoned out idea. And the fact that he goes with that and by the end he's wearing a sequins dress, you know, and it, beautiful, man. What a beautiful movie.
So beautiful.
I'm so glad that I squeezed it in to this weekend.
So I'm going to go with a simple one for my next puzzle piece. And that is the Cheech and Chong films. Just setting these characters, you know, free with lots and lots of weed. And I could have went with many other stoner classics, but figured I'd take it back to Cheech and Chong, especially because of those giant joints that people are smoking in this movie,
the whole movie.
Which you don't see very often. Like the pilot was smoking. You don't see those very often in movies. So even stoner movies, I think some stoner movies think this is too ridiculous. Let's dial it back a bit.
I remember when Seth Rogen made Pineapple Express, he was doing an interview about it, and somebody was like, I don't know, it's a weed action movie. That seems a little silly. And he pointed out, he's like, the most famous weed movie of all time has them making a fucking car out of weed. What are you talking about?
And they're always like on some kind of like crazy quest that's like just ridiculous. And you know, Moondog is on his own little quest in this movie of self-discovery in this one.
Oh, that scene with the homeless storming the castle, if you will. I mean, that could be straight out of a Cheech and Chong movie. Like, that scene's hysterical. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, speaking of which, before we move on to your next one, it's another thing. I felt this movie it had a very throwback feel to like just fun movies of the 80s and 90s.
For sure.
You don't really see them very often anymore, where there's not some grand, overall lesson. There's not like a big action moment. There, it always seems like comedies nowadays, they always have to mix in other things to either get made or be accepted.
Right.
And there's not a lot of just fun comedies nowadays.
No, well, yeah, no, I agree. I think the beauty of this movie is that it points out that, a great majority of our frustrations and struggles are our own constructs, and I like that this movie kind of does away with this. While I'm not nuts about the idea of substance abuse basically being the escape for that. I like that they very specifically point out that that's just Bum Dog's, and I have a friend named Bum Dog, Moondog, and he's not hurting anybody. You know what I mean? Leave him be.
Leave him be. He's having fun. So what's your next puzzle piece?
I'm just so money focused. The next one that I had was Trading Places.
Oh, nice.
Because again, I like this idea of somebody trying to climb back on top. You know what I mean? And kind of like you said, there's some things that Moondog. Sorry, Bum Dog is a fellow filmmaker. He's a homeless man, but he's a brilliant filmmaker and a really good actor.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's in the movie that I'm making right now, which is why he's on the brain. But Moondog, like I said, he's kind of he's the I don't want to call him an anti-hero, but you get the idea. Much like Dan Aykroyd in Trading Places, who once everything gets taken away from them, having to learn how to acclimate outside of that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And but unlike Trading Places, I love that Dan Aykroyd is just terrible at it. You know what I mean? He's just terrible at it from minute one. By the end of Act 2, he's dressed up as Santa, stuffing salmon down his shirt. But like Moondog, I almost feel like that would be phase one. He'd be like, "Where can I get a Santa suit? I could hide a lot of salmon in that shirt." You know what I mean? Yeah, I loved. There was something so beautiful about the fact that he's struggling to find money the whole time, and then he kind of realizes, like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
like,
yeah, it's great. It's really great, and it's a great thing to see, especially I mean, I don't want to get too heavy, but at a time like now, I mean, everybody's struggling, and so it's like it's good to see. I almost was going to point to the Big Lebowski just for the line "The dude abides."
Sure.
Moondog abides.
Yeah. Well, like Trading Places was definitely a response to the corporate Reagan era, way that things were going, and I think that this movie is the same way. I think that it's a movie that's totally about disconnecting from the internet especially, and just kind of like learning what it's like to really exist and be in a community again. You know what I mean? Which is I think kind of what we're struggling with right now. Everybody is so obsessed with having an identity that's unique to them but the same as everyone else.
Right.
And that's creating a weird break of community, a weird disconnect. And so, again, I think this movie, like Trading Places, is a response to what is really weighing down on us right now.
It's funny you say that. One last point on that. This movie feels like it could have taken place at any time.
Sure.
Like you don't know whether or not they've got smartphones, whether or not they've got, if the internet is even a thing within the world of this movie.
Right.
It's like they're just, they're actually out there living,
right.
And they're not sitting on computers.
Mm-hmm. And well, the only thing that dates it at all that we know it's at least post 90s are those fucking Jinko jeans. Like, I'm really glad that in all the marketing they really only show Zac Efron from the waist up, because when that big reveal when he's on like the Heelys and he's just like skating around those guys in those Jinko jeans, oh my god.
Speaking of Zac Efron, we get like I've never seen a character that we get the perfect amount of.
Right.
Any more, it would be like, oh, this is going to go in a bad direction. Right. And any less, you'd be like, oh, I wanted more of him. It's like they really used him to perfection.
Oh, right. Well, Harmony Korine is also very good about satirizing the religious in his movies, like without necessarily making fun of religion itself. You know what I mean? Which is kind of something that South Park does really brilliantly too. But I think about Diamond Dallas Page when he was the youth pastor in Spring Breakers, when he's like, "Are you jacked up on Jesus?" It was good. I really loved Zac Efron's whole character and how he actually legitimately loved Creed. I think that was the cue for me too, that this is just a feel-good movie about letting people be themselves, because you know what I mean, like even Moondog, when he hears Creed, he's just like, oh yeah, this is great,
this is pretty good,
yeah, I love this, you know what I mean? Just, oh man, that's what we need more of, man. We need more love and positivity, but how do you market that?
Anyways. Yeah, right. All right, what's your next puzzle piece?
Oh, it's me up again. Well, I mean, no.
Oh wait, no, yeah, you just did Trading Places.
Nice try, sucker.
Yeah, sorry, man, I'm sorry. Okay, so where does that leave me? Okay, so my next puzzle piece then is it's actually a combination of two movies, two movies that I love and a lot of people don't like, and I feel like this is a movie that probably would have quite a bit of love it or hate it situation with most people, but Freddy Got Fingered and Pootie Tang.
Oh. My God. You're talking my language now.
All right. Nice. Yeah. I mean, these are movies where, first of all, you just, you go for broke, you just do what feels right, what feels fun, what feels funny. And, if the audience comes along with you, they come along with you.
Sure.
You don't worry about it otherwise. And then also there's a little bit to the structure. Like, we talked earlier about how this one has more of a structure than most of Korine's films.
Right.
But, that structure is kind of a connect the dots of almost sketch-like moments where it's like you meet a new character, some funny shit happens with that character. You meet the next character or the next situation, funny shit happens there. And so I feel like these are three movies of a kind in a way where they all they all lead our hero on that kind of a journey where they're getting
like
into
an
different
odyssey.
situations. Yes, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Well, no, it's really what's really funny is about well, Pootie Tang. First of all, is the only thing that Louis C.K. has put his name on that I'm a fan of, and but you can tell that was a patch job. The studio got something. They went, "What the hell is this?" And they forced them. They threw them aside and they put a structure to it and made it. It's 78 minutes, I think, with a padded opening credit sequence.
Yeah.
But Freddy Got Fingered, especially, is a movie that it's so funny. My mother is a huge fan of both of those movies, and I showed. We saw Pootie Tang when it came out on video, and she's loved it ever since. But Freddy Got Fingered, I just showed her recently, like a year or two ago, and I've seen that movie so many times I can quote it, from start to finish.
Me too.
But my mother, when she got done watching it, she's like, "I loved that," and I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, it's a Marx Brothers movie."
Right.
And she's right. The beauty of Freddy Got Fingered, much like the beauty of the Beach Bum, is that there is a structure to Freddy Got Fingered, and there is purpose in Freddy Got Fingered. There is a value system in Freddy Got Fingered, and it's kind of the same one as the Beach Bum, which is let me be me. Stop trying to make me be something else. But what I think the Beach Bum does beautifully, that Freddy Got Fingered is more of a satire of, is that is Isla Fisher's whole point. You know what I mean?
Right.
Actually be you. Don't let the pressure to be the moondog everybody loves get to you. Be you. You are great. Oh man. This is my kind of movie, dude.
It's great themes involved in these movies.
This is a 2 for 2 so far for McConaughey this year. Like, we're both the movies that he's come out with. They're just like, so how do I pre-order this one? Yeah, for Blu. But like Serenity, I think that this actually had an even worse opening weekend. Which
it's a shame. It's a shame. It did not do very well. I'm thinking about going back and seeing it again though, just to raise those numbers by an extra $12.
If it's up next week, if it's still, because I'm done shooting on Friday, if it's still playing next week, I'm gonna catch it. I want to catch Dumbo too.
I didn't like Dumbo too much, but it was all right.
You leave Dumbo alone. Did you like Dark Shadows?
I thought Dark Shadows was all right. I liked it.
Dark Shadows is my favorite Tim Burton movie outside of the Batmans.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't think it was. I certainly didn't love it, but I thought it was pretty good. Dumbo, I didn't like too much, but Danny DeVito in Dumbo is fantastic. Every moment with him on screen is great.
You could take out the in Dumbo of that sentence, and it would be the same sentence.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. One more thing about Pootie Tang before we move on,
please,
because I'm sure you would appreciate this, and you probably didn't know this. My license plate for the last 10 years has been Kleepa.
No.
Yeah.
For real?
So that's for all our Pootie Tang fans.
That's amazing, sir.
For you.
Oh man, I'm a big fan of that movie. I think that movie's brilliant. And I'm ashamed to say so because I hate Louis C.K. so much. Pre scandal.
Right.
I've never cared for that dude. But hey, c'est la vie. I remember when I saw I Think I Love My Wife, and I was like, this movie isn't good at all, but every scene is almost good. And then a few years later, after Louis C.K. was in, became like a thing, and I was rewatching it, I saw his name in the credits, and as the co-writer, and I went, "Oh, there it is."
Wow, I don't share that sentiment exactly, but moving on. Do you have any other puzzle pieces?
I mean, not really, because the other ones are just so obvious. I mean, you can't, you already brought up Big Lebowski, which of course, but then Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is another one that came to mind. But those movies, it's funny, Lebowski fits into that Odyssey structure very much so. But
yeah,
and I guess so does Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But I don't know, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. See, I expected something more like that out of this movie because of Spring Breakers. I expected a more aggressive, kind of angsty drug movie, if you will. But what I got instead was kind of like The Defense. And Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a scary movie full of doom.
Oh yeah.
You know, and regret. But this movie is literally just it's just such a feel good movie.
So much just fun.
So much that you sit through the 2 minutes of the credits of just him floating on the boat. You know, they just sit there. Yeah, I almost cheered when that happened when he first goes from Key West to Miami, and he's like taking the boat tour, and there's that prolonged shot where he's just like laughing, like ha, ha, ha. I love that.
It's a great laugh too.
Mm-hmm.
Really great
Mm-hmm.
laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I'm actually gonna put Big Lebowski and Fear and Loathing on the list. Might as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help it.
I've got one last thing, and now I couldn't think of a good example. There's maybe you've got one. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna mention it. But I was trying to think of a good example of, you know, really out there independent filmmaker who ends up making something more broad and accessible. And I couldn't really think of a good example. I mean, I thought a little bit of Jon Favreau going to
Chef.
Well, I was thinking going all the way to Iron Man, but yeah, I guess Chef would be a little more in the middle. But I couldn't think of a good. You know, he was never that out there. Even, you know, back in Swing.
He was always trying to make Iron Man. Let's face it.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't really a good example. So I couldn't think of a good one, but I know there's some, you know, weird director who has gone on to make big movies, and I was trying to think of who it is.
Like Spike Lee doing something like Inside Man, but
that's a pretty good one.
Well, you know, I just saw the trailer for that new Jim Jarmusch movie with the zombies. I can't recall the name of it.
The Dead Don't Die.
That's it. Dead Don't Die, and
yeah,
like that looks pretty damned conventional. Like that looks like a pretty, you know, I'm not a Jarmusch fan necessarily, but that one definitely looks like pretty out there. I remember when I got to meet Harmony Korine when Spring Breakers came out, and I saw Spring Breakers 3 times on opening day, and
wow.
And I was working at ArcLight, the theater at the time, and he came to do a Q&A, and when he showed up, I was on my break outside, and his assistant, I was wearing my uniform, and his assistant walks up, she goes, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yeah," and he's there with her, and he looked like death. She goes, "I need you to stay with him while I go get him some tea." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he walks up and he goes, "Hey, do you mind if I wrap an arm around you? It's hard to stand." And I was like, "Do you want to sit?" And he goes, "No, I won't be able to get back up." You know, and he wraps an arm around me, and he asked me how I was doing. I was like, "Doing good." He asked me how my day was. I was like, "Yeah, I saw your movie 3 times." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, I did, you know. And I told him I told him it was his Annie Hall. And he was like, "You're gonna have to explain that one to me." And I told him it was because I felt like Woody Allen up to that point, maybe even Woody Allen fits into what you were just talking about. Woody Allen up to that point was bringing us into his world with movies like Bananas and Love and Death and Sleeper. They were his you know what I mean? They were these abstract, crazy, silly worlds. And then out of nowhere, here comes Annie Hall, where for the first time, Woody said, "This is how your world looks to me." You know what I mean? Like these are the struggles and the frustrations that I see that are self-inflicted. You know what I mean? And I felt like Harmony Korine was very much so the same. Like, even though I can really relate to the world of Gummo, don't be afraid. It's still a Harmony Korine world. You know what I mean? Where people speak in poetry, or Julian Donkey Boy, or even Trash Humpers. But by design, Spring Breakers is about a man who speaks in insane poetry. You know, with James Franco. You know what I mean? Like this wannabe rapper. And it's a real commentary on the actual world, not a glimpse into like a world that we don't, you know, normally see like his other films. But this is like, no, this is mainstream Disney princess culture. You know?
No, absolutely. I agree with that point. And
did you care for Spring Breakers?
I did. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. It's a movie I've always thought about going back to because I only watched it the one time, you know, when it first came out. Yeah, and I've always thought about going back to it just to see, like, you know, because it was just so crazy. I mean, I honestly hadn't seen, I've only seen his first couple of movies up until that point. I haven't seen any of the in-between ones, the ones that came out in the early 2000s or any of that. I haven't seen any of that.
The only ones that I can recommend, although I'm a huge supporter of him, the ones I could recommend are Gummo and Trash Humpers.
Yeah, see, Gummo I saw back in the day. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
was like the movie everybody passed around
Mm-hmm.
back in high school,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, no, Spring Breakers was it was wild and it was fun, and it was interesting. It was like very just so different and interesting.
There's so
But
much there's so much to that movie. It's insane. You could write a whole book on it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sure.
even at the beginning when you first see them in class and they're like drawing pictures of dicks while the teacher is talking about the abolition of slavery, which then led into Jim Crow, which then leads into a fetishization of black culture. Like that's what he's talking about in the background of this scene, and that's the whole movie is about. You know what I mean? It's a
Oh
brilliantly
yeah.
structured film as well, but it's much more. It's a little. It's a little more angry, and I don't want to say angry, but it's a little more aggressive. It's a very aggressive movie.
Sure.
And this is the more this is more like the Sunday afternoon beach bum, and yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, it came right at the end of the first week of shooting. When you're shooting a feature film for under $40,000, things get a little stressful. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure.
And
I'm
then
sure.
on top of that, having to work the weekends, I had to work doubles on the weekends, 15 hours each day. And I managed to catch the last show on Sunday night of Beach Bum here. And like, I was ready for them to rewind it. I was like, play that again. I needed that, man.
I can imagine. Well, let's do the finished puzzle, and then we'll get into any final thoughts. So, the finished puzzle includes Arthur, Surfer Dude, Club Dread, Tropic Thunder, Young Adult, Cheech and Chong movies, Trading Places, Freddy Got Fingered,
Ah,
Pootie Tang, The Big Lebowski, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and then we talked about some independent filmmakers who went and made something a little more mainstream.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's it for the Beach Bum. Any other closing thoughts? Well, one thing that I actually wanted to mention real quick, we hadn't really talked about it yet until this point. Martin Lawrence just
Amazing.
absolutely killing it.
Amazing.
I mean, give this guy a whole second act, please.
Yeah, yeah, he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. I think that everybody in this movie was really brilliant, but he really is a shining gem.
Oh,
And you could tell that he gave it more than was on the page.
yeah.
You know that
That's a character.
Do you know
That's
that
a character.
he's actually the third, I believe it's like third or fourth richest uh black actor?
Really?
Yeah, it's like
That's syndication, I guess, huh?
I actually think he's ahead of Will Smith, if I remember correctly,
Wow.
that he, Tyler Perry, Bill Cosby, and Will Smith are the top four
Huh.
richest. Like what kind of back end deals he was making. But that guy's a
Oh,
genius.
yeah. Must be a smart dude.
He could buy a much nicer boat than the one that he had in this movie.
Captain Whack.
But he trades him the foot for the hat, and he's like, "That's a good trade." Like
That's a good trade. Oh, amazing. Just so amazing. Oh, man. Well, any last minute things you want to mention about the movie? And then also, as always, if you got anything you watched lately you want to recommend, and then plug your projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, last thing I'll say about the Beach Bum is that it's a movie that as we're seeing, isn't really catching wind. Woody Allen, when he made Hollywood Ending, that's like the one. Woody Allen notoriously doesn't like his films, but that's the one movie where he's like, I don't know why people didn't come to that one. He's like, I thought I did my job. He's like, I like that movie. It's cute, and I wonder if there's a little bit of that for Harmony Korine, where he's like, really, they didn't come,
Mhm.
But I think that this movie, in the best way, is a movie that's just never gonna die.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll ever reach the heights of Lebowski or anything like that, but because that movie has a level of cool to it, and I think the beauty
Right.
of Bum Dog is that there's not an ounce of cool to it. And
Maybe it'll get a Freddy Got Fingered level.
oh man, Freddy Got Fingered actually. He came to Tom Green came to Jacksonville when I was living there for a comedy show. So this theater they set up this midnight screening of Freddy Got Fingered while he was there, hoping he'd come for a Q&A, which he did, and it sold out, which was beautiful. And Tom Green asked the audience to say the lines out loud if you want, have a good time, and like nonstop the entire audience was saying the whole movie out loud. And usually that pisses me off, but for the first time, I felt like, I'm not alone.
Yeah, not alone. I'm allowed to like this freaking movie.
At the theater, we reached out. They reached out about getting a 35 millimeter print for the midnight screening, and Fox, they were like, we destroyed them all.
Oh God.
So they ended up screening a DVD, but man, that's more than okay. So, well.
Man. So, recommendation.
I really, I haven't been able to watch a whole lot here lately. For obvious reasons. Oh, I did see a film. I think it's called One Cut of the Dead. Have you? Do you know this film? Have you heard of this film?
I have not.
No. It's trying to remember where it was from, but the movie is about a I saw this like a month ago. I'm typing it in. I want to make sure that I'm getting it right. Yep.
Yeah, I just found it.
One Cut of the Dead.
Currently has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, by the way.
That's not enough. Yeah, it's a Japanese horror film that I don't want to dare give anything away about, except that it is a zombie film that is one take. Oh man, I'm looking at the poster right now, and that's a pretty good poster. My buddy, we played it at a theater here, after hours, and it was amazing. I'm not a zombie movie fan. It's hard for me to watch movies with subtitles. I know how that makes me sound, but it's just, I more so mean the way that I like to watch movies is like I like to engage. I love conversation. Like that's what I always gravitate toward in films. And so like part of conversation is inflection, is tone, is an emphasis. Sure. So like it's hard for me to kind of navigate what's going on when I have to read.
I get that completely.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, and so like when he was like, we're gonna be watching One Cut of the Dead. It's a Japanese zombie movie. I was like, oh my God. I was like, and I live so far away. It would take so long to get home. I was like, I'll just take a nap. And then for some reason, the first half of it, I just kept watching. And then by the end, then the second half started, and I went, oh, this is an interesting turn. And at the very end, I was standing up in the theater and like running in circles. It was like another just feel great movie, like a beautiful movie. I just, it was awesome. Dude, find it.
Sounds really awesome. It sounds really freaking awesome. So if you just want to plug your films, where can people find you?
Oh, I mean, still the same. On Facebook, we got a page, Blue Means Pregnant Films. And I've got if anybody who is on the group wants to get in contact with me, just message me. I can send you anything too. We're working on this new movie right now. It's something that I wrote back in 2014 that, a few people have been kind of like forcing or pushing on me for years. Like, you should make tellers. And it's a murder mystery, noir, but it's actually really just a love story. It's a humanist deconstruction of genre tropes. Because much like Harmony Korine, and much like the Beach Bum, I feel like there's a little bit of deconstruction that needs to happen here to get us back to what really matters. And it's easy to get caught up in a world of, Iron Mans and iPhones, and I think that like getting back to the basics of like how nice it feels just to like sit on your porch sometimes and like wave to the neighbor. Like I think that's important. So.
Absolutely. Well, I know you got to get back to shooting, so thanks as always for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love doing it.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to talk about McConaughey again.
Oh man, I'll do it anytime.
Hi, this is Dean from Podscure. We're just a little indie podcast that goes out and searches for new, obscure, and independent podcasts and interviews their hosts to see what drives them, what makes them laugh, what they love, and if they can tell the difference between Don's voice and mine. Join us, won't you? You can find us at www.podscure.com or anywhere else you get your podcasts, even Spotify. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just look for Podscure. We'll be there.
All right, that does it for today's episode on The Beach Bum with co-host Joe Black. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And for those of you who are subscribed, I thank you especially. But there's a level above subscribing, and I think those people even more. And those are the people that rate and review us on iTunes, because from what I hear, it is a good thing for you to do for us. So go ahead, rate and review us on iTunes. That would be awesome. And you know what? You wanna be even cooler than that? Join the Piecing It Together, a movie discussion group on Facebook, where the conversation about all these movies continues. We are having a blast in there talking about all kinds of movies, and I would love it if you joined us. So I think that does it for today. And, I'm actually heading out in a few minutes to go to, and this is recorded the night before this is actually up on the podcast, but I am going to the opening of the Galaxy Boulevard Mall with friend of the show Josh Bell, and we're going to check out that new Sony digital cinema screen, which is supposedly the best screen in the entire world. And it's right here in Las Vegas, opening today. So I'm pretty excited about it. We're seeing Shazam. That is what they're opening the theater with. And we'll be back with a Shazam episode next week. And before that, it's actually going to be kind of a DC superhero week, because on Monday we have a Breaking It Apart special episode on the original Superman the movie. So yeah, we've got plenty of DC superheroes this coming week, all co-hosted by our buddy Chad Clinton Freeman. But you know what? They're going to be some fun episodes. And then we got a whole bunch of other movies to talk about, because we already got a bunch of other episodes in the can. And then there's so many movies coming out here soon. So, we got Pet Sematary this weekend. I'm sure we're going to do that. And just lots and lots of other movies. So go see more movies and then listen to more Piecing It Together. Let's leave you guys with a piece of music. I was trying to find something kind of stonery to go along with The Beach Bum. Couldn't quite find one, but this one track, Only in Dreams, I think kind of fits the bill. So this is from my album Head Like Fire. It's called Only in Dreams. Enjoy it, and we will be back next week with more Piecing It Together.
and all points west.